the pressure who no book. If you not have no education, people treat you like a book.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another tutorial in this COVID-19 pandemic season. Parents, thank you very much for the hard work you've been doing with the students at home. Thank you very much. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you. Today we're going to be looking at ratio, and we're going to be starting by, I'm going to be calling this topic Introduction to Ratio. So we're going to be doing an introduction to ratio. Before we go into today's topic, we need to remember how to cancel. Now, we looked at canceling when we were looking at fractions, but let's just do a reminder. We have 24 over 80. To cancel this down to the simplest term, simplest form, or to the lowest fraction that it can be, we find common factors. Now, we could find many common factors. 2 can divide that, and it can divide that without leaving a remainder. 4 can divide it without leaving a remainder. 8 can divide it without leaving a remainder. But if I want to get my destination faster, I use the highest common factor. So I can use the highest common factor. So I'm going to be using 8. 8 into 24 is going to be giving me 3. And 8 into 80 is going to give us 10. So this canceling down is going to give us 3 out of 10. If you wanted to go step by step, you could say both of them are even numbers. Divide that by 2, I'm going to get 12. Divide that by 2, I'm going to get 40. But that's still not the simplest. You could go further. You could decide to divide that by 4, or you could decide to divide it by 2, but let's just go the long way. Both of them can be divided by 2. 2 into 12 is 6. 2 into 40 is 20. Still can go down further. So I could still divide again by 2. 2 into 6 is 3. 2 into 20 is 10. So we still end up with the simplest form of this going to be 3 over 10. So knowing how to cancel is going to be very beneficial in doing ratio. What is ratio? Ratio is a comparison. Ratio compares one thing against another. So when we're looking at ratio, we're looking at comparison. We're looking at comparing stuff. Now let's look at an example. There on your screen, we have a bottle of squash, and we're going to make drink from that squash. The instruction says dilute 1 part of concentrate between 4 parts of water. Here we have squash, and we have water. I'm going to put these 2 dots there. So this means squash to water. How much squash we're going to be using to water? So 1 part of squash to 4 parts water. So we have 1 part of squash to 4 parts water. Let's do a demonstration of what this really means. Now, I do not have a bottle of squash, so I'm going to use instead a bottle of syrup or some syrup. I'm told that it's 1 to 4, so I'm going to use this as my measuring instrument, or my measuring cup, or my measuring glass. Now, if I use 1 of this, so here, squash, in this case, this is representing the squash, this is syrup. So I'm going to be using 1 of this. So I'm going to be pouring 1 of this. So I've poured 1 of this. So if I pour 1 of this, it means I'm going to have to pour 4 water. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So here I have in this jug ratio of squash to water 1 to 4. So if I compare the parts, I have 1 part of squash to 4 parts of water. Now suppose I decide that this was not enough and I need more. So it means I could put another glass of squash. In this case, I'm using this glass as my measuring. You could use whatever it is. So if I use 1 of that, it means I'm going to have to go ahead and then do 4 more of that because I'm doing 1 to 4. So every time I do 1 glass of squash, I'm going to be doing 4 glasses of water. 2, 3, 4. So here I have 2 parts of squash to 8 parts of water. So first I had 1 to 4, but I did that twice. So I did 2, and because I did 2, I'm then going to go 8 glasses of water. So here is what an example of what ratio is. It's a comparison. 1 glass of squash to 4 glasses of water. If I do 2 glasses of squash, then I have to do 8 glasses of water. So here we have 1 to 4 or 2 to 8. Now, you notice I said squash here and water. So because I talk about the squash first, I have to put the 1 first and water next. If I was doing water to squash, I would have to do water to squash. So if I do water to squash, then it would be 4 to 1. And then it's going to give me 8 to 2. So the order in which we say it is important. So I could say squash to water. So 1 part of squash to 4 parts water. 2 parts of squash to 8 parts water. So the way we say this is 1 to 4. These 2 little dots here is replace the word 2. 1 to 4, 2 to 8. Or if we were going to say water first, we say 4 to 1 or 8 to 2. So this is an example of what ratio is. Ratio is comparing one amount against another. Here I have a bottle of bleach. Now we know we can use bleach as disinfectant, but we can also use it to remove stain. Now, here is the instruction about what we need to do to remove stain. The instruction for removing stain is 25 milliliters of bleach to 5 liters of water. Okay, so we're comparing bleach with water. So bleach to water. We want 25 milliliters of bleach to 5 liters of water. Now, if I was asked to simplify this, I would have to change them to the same thing, either make both of them milliliters or both of them liters. But we're not getting into that now. We're just talking about what ratio is. So every time I use 25 milliliters of bleach, I need to use 5 liters of water. Now I have a little problem there. I do not have any measuring cup that can hold 25 milliliters. But I know that this holds 100 milliliters. I know this holds 100 milliliters. And I also know that this bottle, because it's written on it, holds 1 liter. So I then can use this 100 milliliters. If I use this 100 milliliters, it means I'm doing this 4 times. It means I'm doing 4 sets of 25 milliliters because 25 times 4 gives 100. Now, if I'm going to do that 4 times, it means I've got to do this 4 times as well. So then it's going to be 20 liters. So what this means is that I do not have a measuring cup that's going to be 25 milliliter. It doesn't mean that I can't use my bleach. I know that this can hold 100. So this can hold 4 times 25. So that means I'm going to do 4 times 5 liters. So here, if I was going to fill this with bleach, making it 25 milliliters, I'm not going to pour the bleach for safety purposes. So here, if I pour this full, which is going to be 100 milliliter, it means I've got to do this 20 times. Because if I put 25, it would be 5 of this. And another 25 would be 5 of this. Another 25 would be 5 of this. And another 25 would be 5 of this. So 4 25s is 100. And because I'm using this 4 times the amount that I'm supposed to be using, I've got to do this 4 times the amount. So here we have 100 milliliters of bleach compared to 20 liters of water if I was going to remove stain. So here I'm comparing amounts. I'm comparing the amount of bleach that I'm going to be using to the amount of water that I'm going to be using. So here is another example of what ratio is. Ratio is a comparison. So in today's lesson, we looked at introduction to ratio. What is ratio? Ratio is a comparison of two or more objects or two or more parts. So when we're doing ratio, we are comparing. We're comparing one thing to another. We looked at what if we were asked to make some squash or to make some drink using squash and water. So we looked at how much squash we would use in comparison to how much water. We also looked at the instruction for removing stain from clothes using bleach and water. And we looked at how much bleach you would use in comparison to how much water. Now, if we could look at this final example of ratio, here I have a ratio. I'm asked to describe this ratio. I'm asked to describe the ones that are colored in comparison to the ones that are not colored. So here we have 1, 2 colored, one's not colored. 1, 2 colored, one's not colored. 1, 2 colored, one's not colored. 1, 2 colored, one is not colored. 1, 2 colored, one is not colored. So I have the ratio of colored to non-colored is going to be 2 to 1. The ratio of colored to non-colored is 2 to 1. I could also say it another way. I could say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I could say it's going to be 10 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 to 5. Or if I was given it as colored to non-colored and I do 10 to 5, I could be asked to simplify that. To simplify that, it means I'm going to cancel them. So I need to find a number that can divide that and a number that can divide that. 5 can divide both of them. So 5 into 10, 2, 5 into 5, 1. Also remember that in this case, I asked for the ratio of colored to non-colored. If I'd asked for the ratio of non-colored to colored, you'd have to write it the other way around. So in this case, it would be 1 to 2. And then it would be 5 to 10. So the way you write ratio is dependent on what you're asked. If I'm asked for colored to non-colored, then I use colored first and non-colored after. If I'm asked for non-colored to colored, then I use the non-colored first and then the colored after. So here, hopefully you understand a little bit more about what ratio is.